create great HR content for a Caribbean audience? That's the question for tonight. And in case this is your first time here at Caribbean HR Forum, my name is Francis Wade. I happen to be the founder of this organization. I run it with my wife and colleague Dale, and welcome to the webinar tonight, which is all about the 3 hidden obstacles to impacting HR content, impactful HR content. And if you're here tonight, I imagine that you have an interest in content. And let's get things going. I want to make sure that you're hearing me okay. Could you just please say hi? Oh, we've already started. Great. Just put hello in the chat and which country you're coming from. Hi, Diana. Good to see you again. Okay, let's see who else we have. And I'll pull up the first slide. Hi, Tavisha. Hi, Sophia. Okay, so the first slide is actually just a repeat of the question that I asked at the very top. How do you consistently create great HR content for a Caribbean audience? And I probably am not crazy in saying that this might be the very first webinar of its kind to address this particular issue, this particular challenge. Because I know a lot of people out there who want to create content and don't find it to be easy. So I'm going to put my slides up in the chat. In order to expand them so that you can see them, all you need to do is click on the slide and the slide will expand to fill up the entire screen. So just click on the slide. Hi, Rajiv. And I'm going to ask or folks who are listening in if they could keep repeating for the folks who are coming in that all they need to do is to click on the slide in order to expand it and see. So tonight's agenda. So our purpose is to figure out how to create great HR content for our audience. So the first part of the evening, which will take about 60 to 70 minutes, I'll be doing an interactive presentation. You and I will be having a discussion, going back and forth, just the way we already started. I'll be introducing you to a training that's coming up for thought leaders in HR. And then in the second part of the evening, we're going to take like a 5-minute intermission or thereabouts, come back at 7:15 Jamaica time, 8:15 Bahamas, Trinidad, and Barbados time. And then we're going to take some questions. We're going to do a free giveaway. There'll be a competition during the networking session. So we're having a networking session tonight where you'll be able to meet other content creators. And that's our agenda. And let's move right on. So I made a passing reference to a training that's coming up. And as you know, we often have a training or try to have a training whenever we have a webinar, or sometimes we try to have a conference, which is even a bigger deal. But the HR Thought Leaders training is going to be starting in December. And this is a bit of a slice, an introduction to what that training is all about by actually doing some of it. So we're actually going to be doing some of the activities that will be in that training. Heard an interesting story the other day. So there's this fella, his name is Tony Posavino, something like that. He's in Ohio in the United States. He worked for Sherwin-Williams and he loves paint. Sherwin-Williams, as you know, is a paint company, and he got fired. So why did he get fired? He had a YouTube channel where he was telling people, a TikTok channel, telling people all over the world about how to mix paint because he loves paint. He had 1.4 million followers to his TikTok channel to all about paint. And he got fired by Sherwin-Williams. They said that he was doing his hobby of talking about how much he loved paint and mixing paint while he was working. So he posted something while he was on the job and he was summarily fired. And they said, well, we have to stick to our policies because they're really important. Well, the good news is that as soon as he was fired, it made national headlines in the States. Every paint company, national paint company, rushed to offer him a job. And he got a job within days at a Florida company called Florida Paints, which is a kind of, he said it was a mom and pop. They have about 12 stores, which is big for the US. Sorry, small for the US, compared to the other big people that were really wanting him to come work for them. So why do I share that story? Tony was a thought leader, a thought leader who Sherwin-Williams didn't recognize and didn't understand. And the value that he had far superseded the amount he was being paid by the company to have that job. So while he was upset at being fired, they made a huge mistake. And now the PR, as you can imagine, all over Twitter and Facebook, people are talking about how dumb this company was to not realize that they were firing their thought leader for doing what you hope your employees do, which is to engage in your brand and to love the paint. So, interesting story for us. Why? Because there are lots of HR professionals who work for companies who would love to be like a Tony, to have a following, to be that kind of influence. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let me ask you a question. With respect to content creation, are you already convinced that content creation is important? I may have already given you a hint. But if you're a no, you're not convinced, then maybe you're here to find out what's the whole big deal about content creation. Put 1 for no. If you're absolutely convinced, put a 5 for yes. So put 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the chat and let's see. Chanel says a 5, Andrew is a 5. Okay, I don't know if we're going to get any ones. Hermes is a 5. Forcian, welcome. Hi Sharon. All 5s. Okay, I'm talking to the choir. But let me ask you a more difficult question. Hey Wesley, long time. Why is content creation important to you? Something brought you tonight to this webinar. Why do you think content creation is so important? So I know you're not going to be creating content around paint like Tony was for Sherwin-Williams. Why is creating HR content for a regional audience important to you? So just put the answers in the chat and let's see really what's most important to us. So Hermes, thanks for going first. It maintains and it creates a presence for the professional. Yep, it's a great way to share knowledge. Yep, it provides thought leadership. And thought leadership, we're going to be defining that tonight. So we'll take a look at that. Paula says, this is very important. You get to share and learn. So there's no faster way to share and to learn than to learn than it is to share. It's one thing to read a book. It's another thing to say that you disagree with the book. It's a whole another thing to go public with your disagreement about the book. But that's the way you become a great content creator. Maybe. We'll see tonight. We'll see. All right, here's the next question. If you're a content producer, well, this is more a question of what level of content are you producing? Well, as I said, it tells others what you're up to, giving them a chance to log on. Great. Sure does. So what frequency of content are you producing? So N could be none. So you haven't produced anything in the last year. All the way down to W. Maybe there's even a D for somebody who's producing content daily at this point. That'd be kind of amazing. But let's see, what frequency are you producing content at right now? Or have you produced content at this year? I know this year has been a funny year, but let's get an idea of how active you are in creating HR content. So HR content for a Caribbean audience. Let's see what we have here. I can't scroll. Hold on, guys. I'm not seeing the responses because it's... So we have some N's. 2 to 3 times a week. That's a W, a big W, Hermes. Just did 1, great, ramping up to be a W. W doesn't work out all the time, right? So you're at N, some N's and some W's. Nobody in between? Okay, great. Chanel says, none yet. That's why I'm here to learn. Great, that's the idea. So I'm here to tell you, as someone who not only produces content, but someone who manages other people producing content. So if you came to the Caribbean HR Forum virtual conference, you know that we had 73 content creators. Dale and I found them from all over the Caribbean. It took some finding. It took some corralling. It took some convincing, but it wasn't easy to find 73 content creators. There's a challenge here in the Caribbean. They, compared to the spaces in the US or in HR or any other, we're kind of shy with respect to creating content. So we asked maybe 150, 200 people to create content for the conference in order to have 73 people say yes. We asked a lot of people. And some presented for the very first time. And we brought them along and helped them and showed them how and gave them the tools and the opportunity and the audience and suggested topics and gave feedback. And it was a lot of work. And Dale is right, some of them weren't on LinkedIn, so they couldn't be found at all. So if they existed, they couldn't be noticed. They were on platforms that nobody uses. And there are some challenges. But let me ask you, what are some of the challenges you know of with respect to creating content for a Caribbean audience in the HR space? Just slide up some answers in the chat there for me. And let's see what we have. The audience is a hard one. Okay. Crab in a barrel. So every country in the region has stories about crabs in barrels and putting yourself out there. And they have proverbs that say the more monkey climb, the more they expose. And when you put yourself out there, and there's a lot of people who told us they don't want to be out there because they don't want the criticism. And they're afraid. There are people on Caribbean HR forum who you said, guys, put up your ideas. You have great ideas, share them. They say, well, you know, I'm not like, and they say Francis, or they say, I'm not like Kwame Dawes. I don't have a PhD. I didn't talk at the conference. Gemma says, not sure what you mean by HR content. We'll address that in just a moment. But for now, just assume it to be any kind of education that's presented in text, video, or audio for the HR professionals in the region. Let's leave it at that for now, because I'm going to change that definition shortly. We're not sold on the value of content creation or what it can do for our brand. Yes, Andrew, absolutely. It remains a bit of a mystery as to how hard work, like putting content together, actually leads to business results. I'm going to ask you to think about these business results today. Donna, nobody reads. And that's probably why there's lots of videos and audios that are going out now. So tonight we're going to talk about all the different kinds of content that exists. But let me ask you this. If you're here and you're interested in content creation, so we're the proud, the brave, the few. What if you didn't manifest the content you aspire to create? You know, what if you didn't hit the level that you wanted to? What would that be like in your experience? You know, what if you knew that you had better ideas than some of the things that you're reading? What if you know you had some insights and you weren't able to ever share it? What would that be like? So let's put some answers in the chat. Insanity. Unfulfilling. Yes. Frustrating. Yes. Frustrating. Yes. It would be almost like going to the grave by having your potential not be fulfilled. Devastating. To truly express what you really wanted to. So we're here to cause a breakthrough in all that commitment that you have. Because most people, when they feel these different, the fear, the concern, Donna, I deprived the world of my ideas. Yeah, this is like going to the grave because you're not fulfilling your potential. But I just put a note up in the chat that says what people do when they have these feelings is that they resort to any number of things, including waiting for the mood, waiting for more time, waiting for people to change. And you know what? None of those things is going to happen anytime soon. So people find themselves being stuck. I talk to lots of people who have lots of great ideas who tell me all the reasons why they can't create content. All right. So let me ask you a question. And this is a trick one. For the purposes of tonight, is this content? So that's number one. Paula says no. Shana says yes. Deborah says yes. Hermie says no. We're gonna have an argument here tonight. Here's the second one. Is this content? So if you blow it up, you'll see that let me get the third one up also. And the third one, so make sure you can read it because the devil is in the details. So there's three kinds of stuff that I've put up. So if you click on the diagram, it'll blow up and fill up your screen. The first one is Happy Monday from Francis Wade at my company, something or the other. The second one is work harder today than yesterday, which is a trivial quote that I didn't make up, but I would claim as my own. And then I hashtag it with my name. Is that content? And then the third one is just telling you something great that happened with my client. Is that content? So I'm seeing a range of answers. And I'm going to tell you that for purposes of tonight, none of these is content. Why would I say that? Oh my goodness. I'm going to have people logging off. You're going to disagree with me, but here's another slice on it. None of these is content for the purposes of tonight. Tremaine says, what? Deborah says she thought the third was content. Or here's another question. Is a tweet content? An Instagram story? Pretty picture, right? How about the Facebook status update? Or a LinkedIn meme or meme? Any of those content? You may see where I'm going with this. So for the purposes of tonight, and you can go back to the old definition of content. Purposes of tonight, none of these are content. All right, so I'm going to reveal the mystery in just a second. Let me keep going. They actually come from a perspective that has become very popular, which is anything is better than nothing. And there's some good advice from the LinkedIn gurus, which say that you need to put up content every other day or at least once a week. And what people have done in response to that kind of heavy demand is to post up simple stuff like Happy Monday, or simple stuff like a tweet, or short stuff like here's what my client told me, or a quote that doesn't do, it's just a quote, or a hashtag Francis Wade's wisdom. Yay, I'm so bright, I'm so smart. So Forcian is kind of getting ahead of us here. She says content needs to be relevant to your business and your audience should benefit from it. So I'm going to offer you a whole different perspective on content tonight. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy. What Forcian said is not an easy concept. But if you never solve this problem, and you all you do is put up this kind of light kind of content, which is better than nothing, or you believe that people are going to reject your ideas, you'd never solve the problem. And we kind of already answered this question. If you got some insight tonight that would open up the doors to your generating great content, it could mean a very big difference to your business. So I'm going to assume that you are up to solving this problem tonight, of defining content in a way from a new perspective, in a way that makes sense, to not giving in to the small content, small C content, that the examples that I gave, and to take on this new perspective that heavy duty content has something to do with what Forcian is talking about, with what she said. So I want to offer you a transformation tonight, a shift from having a vague idea of where you are going and what to do to get there, where there's lots of disagreement, to having a clear plan that appears to be inviting and possible. So the beginnings of a plan to move you in a different direction. And to be honest, this is kind of the path I took. So here's what happened in my case. I hated to develop content. Back in 2000, before 2005, I had a business partner. Her name was Ami Devereaux. That's her picture here. I should have put her name. But she used to put together a newsletter for or a consulting firm when I lived in Florida. And it was her responsibility. And she said, you need to put something into it. And I said, yeah, man, don't worry. And every quarter, she'd come to me and say, okay, what are you putting into the webinar, the newsletter this quarter? And I would say, go ahead and do it without me. She said, no, you're the president of the company, you need to put something in. And she said it with an American accent, of course. And I said, yeah, okay, tomorrow, next week. And I would drag my feet, and it would feel painful to put together 3 paragraphs. And it would be under duress. And it felt like a chore and a burden. And I was always late. And what I gave her was never any good. So fast forward to today, things are a little bit different for me. Tremaine says the pressure allows us to miss the true aim. So back then, the true aim was totally lost to me. So who am I today? I'm someone who I've written for The Gleaner for almost 10 years on a bi-weekly basis as a paid columnist. So I produce content for them. That content gets repurposed as a podcast every 2 weeks as well, my own podcast, and also gets placed on my website. I also have put together, as you know, the virtual conference, or was partnered with Dale in doing that. We also put together the task management and time blocking virtual summit, which was back in March last year. Had 600 people, about 40 presenters. I've also appeared on TV. I also was part of a radio show. On Monday, one of the podcasts I'm on, we reached a milestone. We had 100 episodes and 50,000 downloads. So something changed, obviously, between the time when I hated the idea of content. I hated to put together, I hated the chore, to the point where today I can't find enough time to put together my ideas. Like I literally, if I had more time, I would do more than I'm doing. So what changed was the move back to Jamaica. And in 2005, Dale and I got together. We had just been married. Yes, just been married. Got together our belongings in Florida and started to put them into a container, to ship the container back to Jamaica. And I said, there's got to be some assistance in how do you pack a container or objects for shipment back to Jamaica. Must be some, what's the process? Who do you use? What are the steps? There had to be something. So I went Googling and I said, okay, moving back to Jamaica, shipping advice. Nothing. Okay, moving to the Caribbean, shipping advice. Nothing. Moving anywhere in the world, shipping advice. And then I got some hits. And I said, I want to make it easier for the next set of people who need to move back to Jamaica. I'm going to start writing about how do you pack a container. And I wrote for the first time something in I don't know how many years, something that I wanted to write because I knew it filled an unmet need. And I wanted to make it easy for other Jamaicans to move back if they wanted and not have to go through what I was going through, which is hit or miss. So this blog, which still exists today, it's francismove.blogspot.com if you're interested. I've stopped writing for it. But I started to write about other topics. And I started to write about business, time management, HR, all kinds of different things. And I overcame some obstacles in doing it the way I did it. And I want to share them with you tonight. So tonight, I want to talk about 3 obstacles that we as content creators here in the Caribbean for an HR audience often face. The first has to do with setting the right goals. So let's just jump into that. I want to share with you a breakthrough I had back in 1993. So this is a long time ago. So if you were to survey consultants and ask them how much do you earn and how many people earn the different amounts, you'd expect to see a bell curve, right? Thanks, Dexter. I'm insulted. Dexter says I was born in 1993. That was when oh boy. So this is old data. But if you were to survey consultants, you'd expect to see a bell curve with respect to their income. That there's like a medium, and then some make money on the high end and some make money on the low end, right? That would be kind of a normalized, normal curve, right? But here's the reality, my friends. And this was an eye opener for me. Sitting in New York in the consultant skills training that I attended way back in 1993, there's actually a bimodal distribution, which means that it looks like a camel's hump. There's actually two different pieces to it. But hold on, before I should have asked you, or let me tell you, they did a survey and said, okay, given that there's two humps, they asked the two people in the two different humps. One in the lower hump, the group in the lower hump were earning less than the group in the other hump. And they asked the ones in the lower hump, why are you earning? What are you doing? They didn't ask them why they're earning less. They asked, what are you doing with respect to reaching clients? And look at the things that they said on the left and compare it to the things that the high earning group said on the right. And by the way, this is a copy of the content I got back in the training in New York in 1993. This is a straight copy from the book that I got. I kept it that long because it's stuck with me. What's the difference? Pre-internet. Put the answer in the chat. Why is there that difference? Put your thinking caps on. Let's get some answers up. Diversification. Not quite, Tamisha. Reach. Paul, I think you know the answer already because you've already seen this before. What's the question again? The question is, why does the group of lower earning consultants, why do they use those techniques, and why does a higher earning group use those techniques? Because these are the causes. Rajiv says, allowing people to come to you. Samantha says, exposure, staying relevant. Yes. Jody Ann says, cold calls are invasive lecture speeches to give a person, because cold calls don't work. Yes. If you get away free, that there's no interest left to build. Rika, yes. People in general are visual and gravitate to contents that are relevant to them. Yes, true also. So it really does come down to reach. The folks on the right who earn more money are using techniques that get them to a larger audience. They rely on their content, their knowledge, and they rely on their insights and ideas. And they found ways to spread them to large audiences. If I were to do that same study today, I wonder if on the left, you wouldn't see things like tweets, Instagram posts, and the kinds of things I said were not content on the left, sorry. And on the right, I think some of the same things apply, except it's virtual conferences, it's blogs, it's writing on LinkedIn articles, it's long form content that actually makes a difference. But anyway, let me argue that this has to do with goals. And if the goals are around becoming famous, just wanting to put something out there because someone told you that you should, to just be happy creating stuff and to spend as little time as possible, that those are the wrong goals. And right now, I want to offer you that those goals are leading people to put out very, very light content. The better idea is what someone mentioned before. I think it was Andrew Pearman, which is to be a thought leader. So in this context, what is a thought leader and how does it differ from being just a content creator? But let me ask you, what's the difference between a thought leader versus a content creator? Put that answer up in the chat for me. What is the difference between a thought leader versus a content creator? See, if I called this webinar Thought Leadership, it would have scared off half the audience probably, right? So I call it content creation because it's more readily, you look at content here and there. But I'm really calling you tonight to consider yourself to be a thought leader. The thought leader invites discussion and generates more activity. Yes, a thought leader provokes thinking. Thought leaders are coming up with innovative ways to do things. Yes, they are original. They're not just posting. Yes, thought leadership, there's some depth to it, right? It's not just flinging out stuff because for the sake of flinging it out, or putting out pretty pictures, even of yourself. There's a lot of people putting out pretty pictures of themselves saying, I'm the best, I'm wicked, I'm awesome, hire me as a consultant. I'm offering you a different pathway and saying there's something around thought leadership that needs to be grasped. This is not the easy path. I'm offering you a pathway that may be more lucrative to you in the long term. So a thought leader's goals, my definition for tonight, is to help members of an audience take different actions using new ideas that benefit them. Oh, Dexter, you're getting deep on me, man. Ego serving, thousands of likes or millions in some cases, millions of likes. There's millions out there. So thought leaders' goals is to help members of an audience take different actions using new ideas that help them. So this is a shift I'm asking you to make from helping yourself to helping them. So here are some thought leaders. Hey, Caribbean thought leaders. Who are these people? First person to list all the 3 thought leaders I have pictured here gets a big up. All 3, Dexter. All three. Perhaps, if not the most, no one has all 3. My Caribbean people. Who knows all 3? See? Sharon, are you from St. Lucia? Okay. Thank you, Wesley. Garvey, Williams, and Lewis. Sir Arthur Lewis is the first Nobel Prize winner from the Caribbean, the first of 2 from St. Lucia. And if you think about the contribution they made, it wasn't about being famous, being liked, getting lots of followers. They created content that to this day continues to make a difference. Most people come at content from the opposite direction, which is I come up with a thought or a product or a service, and then I go and try and find people to actually use it. But there's a really big reason why that does not work in today's world. Let me just grab that up. Whew. I need to fix up my slides a little bit differently. But let me ask you this question in the meantime. They were servant leaders, right? Thought leaders are servant leaders. So before we go into the next section, I want to ask you to give me an example of the content you'd like to create. So just put that in the chat, an example of the content you would like to create. Big question. I want you to keep this example in mind as we go along, because we are going to use it in the following exercises, okay? What's an example of the content that you want to create? Go ahead and give me some answers. It could be anything in the audio, it could be text, it could be video, anything in the realm of content that you want to create. Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm just moving some files around to make it easier for myself to find the slides that I need to when I need them. Okay. All right, let's see what examples you came up with. What are examples of the content you want to create? Articles, shorter leads, yep. Text, blogging, yep. Anybody want to write a book? Customer service videos, great, Samantha. Something enlightening on the pandemic, good. What mode do you want to take? Text, audio, or video, or all three, Wesley? HR blogging, great. Leaning towards audio, fantastic. Webinars, yes. About the book, Hermes wants to write a book, excellent. Vlogs, so, great. Okay, so we're talking to the right people here tonight, right? Great. So keep your example in mind for the next steps, okay? Because I want to explain a big difference, the difference between the supply side and the demand side. So the supply side is the part that we control. Supply side is the content, the ideas, the intuitions, the video, the audio. They're the parts that we can produce because we are such bright people, other bright people in HR. However, for this part of the presentation, I'm going to ask you to focus not on the supply side, but on the demand side. And if you want to know where this comes from, it comes from a theory called jobs to be done. Okay, so I've written about this in the Gleaner. You can see there's an article I wrote with a Patty. Would you hire a Patty? Because jobs to be done is all about hiring solutions. So this is about your audience, the demand, okay? Your audience hires different solutions for different purposes. And they solve that, they hire these solutions in order to meet unmet needs. Okay, I'll explain some more because this is a core idea that we're going to be using tonight. You cannot get through tonight without understanding this question. And the question I want you to ask, and you may put it in the chat if you already know, if you're really tracking along, what are the unmet needs of my audience? So this is not about you, okay? We're talking Arthur Lewis, Marcus Garvey, Eric Williams territory. What are the unmet needs of my people? Okay, maybe not your country. What are the unmet needs of my slice of the HR audience? Anyone have any answers? Oh, great, Samantha. Yeah. They don't know how to connect with people over the phone. Oh, Jodianne, as an HR recruiter, my audience, they're not prepared for job searching. Yeah. Okay, good. We're on the right track. All right. Keep putting up some answers. Let's see. And this is what it's really about. Again, it's not about you, it's about them. It's the progress they want to make, but they cannot make. In other words, it's about this struggling moment, this experience that they have. They don't have your product and your service, right? So instead, they're struggling. And in that struggling moment, there are a whole bunch of emotions. So in order to do this well, you need to imagine your audience not having your content. No, this is not an easy. None of the stuff I'm talking about tonight is easy. But it's the first step to understanding the unmet needs of your audience. Lack of strategic orientation. Yes, great. And I want to introduce you to a process that I teach, and I'm going to be teaching it in the training that we have coming up for thought leaders in HR. We call it the unmet needs exercise, and I'm going to introduce you to just a small portion of it tonight. I grabbed out 3 steps that focus on the demand side. So let's talk about the unmet needs first. That's the first one I want to introduce you to. And what are unmet needs? So here's an easy exercise I'd like you to engage in. So what do people say to themselves in their struggling moments? I'm going to ask you to use this construct. It's the one I still use to this day. Basically, you're filling in the blanks, and you're saying this on behalf of your audience. I'm going to show you an example that I put together for tonight's webinar and for the Thought Leaders training. So here I use the exact same construct. When I need to share my insights, I think it says, so people can use them. I want to give some fresh ideas so that I can be inspired by the results they produce. So you can see I've just filled in the blanks, and I'm asking you to do the very same thing, right? Just fill in the blanks and complete the sentence. And let's see what kind of answers we get. Anyone up to this particular challenge? Tonight's all about some big challenges. So with respect to your audience, when they're in their struggling moment and they don't have your solution, your content, what are some of the things that they say in that moment? Come on, content creators. Okay, so Diana says the inspiration comes with the passion from you. Yep. I don't know what to do. Okay, Wesley, so what I'm asking you to do is to complete the sentence. When I feel or need to blank, I want to blank so that I blank. And the example I gave is where I filled in the blanks for you guys when I was planning for this webinar and for the Thought Leaders training. So it's just filling in the blanks on behalf of your audience when they hit their struggling moment. Okay, Tremaine, when I feel I need to share my experiences so I can inspire someone, I want to ensure there is a relevant lesson so that my motive is not lost. Great example. Fantastic. Great. Now, when you actually follow the construct the way I did and the way I always do, you get to be very rigorous around how you're defining the need, and it allows you to go deeper than you can if you stay at the surface. Because really what you're doing is you're digging into emotional needs. You're digging into some emotional experiences that people won't tell you if you ask them. No, you may survey them and you may interview them, but one of the big findings of the jobs to be done technique is that you've got to ask very, very curious sideways questions because people don't know how to answer these questions straight up. All right, so we're going to move to the second part. So the first part is easy. You're just filling in blanks, right? And you can continue to do that and follow the construct that I gave word for word. And let's talk about failing substitutes. So if you have an idea what the unmet need might be and you've already languaged it and you written out your sentence, here's the next piece. That when people are in their struggling moments, they don't just give up and stop. They go and try and find something to substitute. So what does that mean? Well, they look for some way of filling the emotional gap of not having your content or your solution or your product or service or relationship or transformation. So without the thing that you could give them, they look for something else. So Kevin says, when I need to provide guidance to others, yep, I want to ensure that what I provide is useful so that they can be assured that I'm providing factual information. Great. So you'd be in the business of teaching people to provide guidance. Great. Great, great, great. So here are some substitutes that I came up with for people who have found substitutes for tonight. So we can't really tell how many people are watching tonight because there's some on YouTube who are watching right now. We know there are 38 people here on Remo, which is good. We're just below the maximum of 50. And there are people who are not in the webinar, and there are people who won't take the Thought Leaders training because they've found other substitutes. So when they feel that they should be creating content and they're not, they could get frustrated and say, "Cho, let me just go watch my Netflix here." And they go and they grab their tablet and they go watch some Netflix, or they check on Facebook. Or they say, "Boy, I can't find anything on the Caribbean. Well, let me find thought leadership content that's based abroad," which is what I and all of us have done, because there's nothing about, I'm not seeing anything about thought leadership here in the Caribbean, especially in the HR space. So the substitute is we go looking for foreign content, Canadian, UK, American, Australian, and these substitutes don't really work, right? That's why we have the unmet need exists. Sometimes people just stay stuck in feelings of, I can't do this. It's too hard. It takes too long. I don't know if it's going to work. People are going to steal my ideas. I talk to content creators who say all these things. They'll get rejected. It's not going to turn into business results. And they don't create content because they get stuck in these unwanted feelings. So that's the second part, the second step. So the third step, pull it up, that I'm sharing with you from the unmet needs exercise. Again, it's a deep dive into what your audience is experiencing when they're not able to see your content. Has to do with motives. So when you don't do your job and you don't produce the content that would make a difference to meet the unmet need, people aren't able to fulfill their motives. So here are some of the motives that people, I guess that for this webinar and for the thought leader training that follows, it's that people want the webinar and the training to be cost effective. They want it to be interesting and engaging. They want it to be credible. So it's not just wild ideas, actually has some theoretical basis. They want to be practical and based in experience. And they want the webinar and the training to be an efficient use of time. So these are motives, once again, that your audience would have fulfilled or will fulfill once they consume your content. Now, if this sounds like I'm asking you to think deeply about the unmet needs that your audience has, the substitutes that they are using that aren't working, but they have to use because you haven't produced the content yet, and the motives that they'll fulfill once they get a hold of your content. If you're thinking I'm asking you to think deeply, I am. And this is not something I really made up. This is something I put together from jobs to be done theory, game theory, from Michelle Fortin, from a bunch of thought leaders in the marketing space who right now are getting all kinds of traction because their thinking is so breakthrough and so new. Clay Christensen is if you've heard of him, the former Harvard Business School professor, recently passed away. He was a big champion of jobs to be done theory. He popularized the notion. Just passed away. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask you. And I know I'm moving at a speed, guys. It's just got a lot to cover tonight. If your audience consumes your content, what motives do they hope to satisfy? So I want you to think about your own content. If a year from now, you were producing content, like a lot of it, and people were consuming it, what motives would your audience be fulfilling? Just put some words in the chat to give us an idea of what motives are important to you. Let me read Tremaine's comment. Come to think of it, this applies to everyday life. Oh, yes, it certainly does. Something as simple as walking into a business space and seeing an ambiguous sign. Your customers may not be entirely satisfied and find something else to fill the gap because they expected a bit more to fill their needs. Tremaine, that's where we got to go here. If we want to have the impact that we want to have in our customers' experience, that's where we have to go. To have a conference like the one that we had to go deep way back in April. And we did this whole exercise in April. We refined it several times because we needed to get a real deep handle on what our customers' needs and unmet needs were so that we could fulfill them. And my experience is the deeper you go in the beginning, the easier it is at the end. My experience. As Samantha says, a better way to interact with colleagues and customers. Great. That's a great motive. Great. Fantastic. Just exactly the kind of motives your customers want to fulfill. So your customers are out there and they're hungry. They want you to produce your content. But you've got to tune in to their needs so deeply that you can be inspired by them. Great, Donna. Yes, your customers have a motive of becoming systems thinkers. Yes. So the entire needs assessment model that I shared, I'm sharing 3 steps of about 10, sometimes 15. It takes a few hours to complete. This is no light exercise, unfortunately, but In the training, it's what we need to cover in order to get to the unmet needs and to get them to that deep level. You may have heard of the consultants training that Rika and Paula and several others did a few months ago. This was one of the distinctions that we worked on in depth, and they all worked on unmet needs for their clients, their potential clients as consultants. And you can ask them and others who were in that training what that experience was like. It was built on the idea of unmet needs. This is going to have to even go deeper because now we're talking about content. You're not even seeing the clients in this case. You're not even with them one-on-one, so you really have to use your imagination. All right, so the first obstacle was that we don't set the right goals. The second obstacle is that we need to scan the landscape we don't scan the landscape in a very specific kind of way. Because you can imagine, if in terms of the first obstacle, if you're not getting deep into the unmet needs, your content may always look like Me Too content, which is like what everybody else writes, or it may look like lightweight, fluffy, or it may just be pictures of yourself, how great I am, hashtag Francis's wisdom. And that's what you're settling for with respect to content. All right, so to produce great content, you've got to hit deep needs. Okay, so let's talk about the supply side. So we're all over on the demand side, our customers, their unmet needs. Let's talk about us. So we're supplying the ideas, the insights, and we want them to be brand new and fresh. Who wants to put out content that looks like things that have already been said many, many, many times? And it's tough to do that. I could tell you that from having coached lots of content creators. For most of the content creators who spoke at our conference, we had individual speakers. We had half an hour to 1 hour briefings, and from maybe about 3/4 of them. So if you take 73 and you multiply, it was a lot of conversations. But the reason we did that was that we didn't want them to produce content that was just Me Too content. We wanted them to produce fresh ideas. So not everyone was able to. So, it was a tremendous ask to say, please say things that no one has ever said before. But I want to give you some hints as to how you can make your ideas fresh. So here's one way to make your ideas fresh. Take a foreign idea and make it local. So this is one of my favorite ways of taking something that is working in some overseas location and bring it home and say, this is the Jamaican version of it. This is the Kingston version of it. This is the Caribbean version of it. This is the regional version. So this is one way to create a fresh idea. So here's an example. Studying regional professionals. So the idea of studying professionals in a geography is one that is all over the world. That's a common idea, right? And anybody could do that. Well, Dale and I, as you may know, Dale was born in Trinidad. I grew up in Jamaica. And we have a Trinidadian to Jamaican connection going on here. And we did a couple of studies a few years ago. I don't know if you've heard of these. 2 different studies about 5 years apart. And I think Dale has the links. She can put them in the chat. You can download them. The first one was called The Trinidadian Executive in Jamaica. And we interviewed about 25 Trinidad executives working in Jamaica on their experience. And this was at a time when they were having all kinds of difficulty. And we published the results, and it was well received. As you can imagine, nothing else like it. Nobody had ever read anything like it. It was first of its kind. We moved to Trinidad in 2014. And Dale started to make some sounds. We need to repeat that study, the other way around. And I was like, no, it was so much work. And I was feeling lazy. I complained. And I eventually gave in. And the companion study was a Jamaican professional in Trinidad. Not executives, not enough executives to study. But we interviewed and surveyed about 50 to 60 Jamaican professionals working in Trinidad. So Dale is saying it's great work. I would say, will you guys be the judge of it, okay? But what we did was we regionalized and combined and compared and contrasted the experience that we found interesting to us. And people have read it and it's been well received. But I invite you to go check it out for yourself. So here's another way to specialize is to pick a small niche. So I know, for example, some of you have mentioned some small niches tonight around customer service, for example, around recruitment. Pick a tight niche. You may also pick a gender-specific niche, gender-specific set of needs, or an age group like millennials or baby boomers. You could pick a disruption. Many people are doing content around disruptions now. COVID, it's a bit, overdone. A lot of people are doing it. You could pick a technology, or you could just pick some new academic research that's been done in the region and then expound on that. But there's lots of opportunities to take it to the next level. And that would allow your ideas to be fresh. So that's another way to do it. So here's another way to do fresh ideas. Another idea. We're getting just to the top of the hour. At the rate that I'm heading out at and the amount of interaction we're going with, just to give you a time check, I'm going to continue past our advertised time, which was, I think, 7:15. And what I'm going to do is at about 10 past 7, I'm going to close down this room. I'm going to refresh it. We're going to do a technical reset. And then all you'll have to do is refresh your browser, and then we'll come back. And then I'll continue at 7:15 Jamaica time. So I'll continue at a quarter past the hour. So I'll tell you when I'm going to do it, but it's not just yet. So here's another way to get fresh ideas. Believe it or not, your ideas have something to do with where you share them. And the big decisions that you have to make around where you share have to do with, do I own the channel or is it a rented channel? When you're on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you're renting their channel because they can always kick you off or just delete all of your content or decide to go to business and then all of your content is gone. And this happens to people all the time. Are you going to be public or are you going to be private? Who you share the content with in terms of which channel makes a big difference to meeting different audiences' unmet needs. And it makes a difference in the feedback you get. Sharing on Carib HR Forum. So Carib HR Forum is technically a rented platform because Dale and I could decide to stop paying the bills tomorrow and all the content on Carib HR Forum would disappear. It's possible. But it does allow you a powerful way to share with a smaller audience that is more, I would say, more open to the idea of having content creators on our platform because everyone wants to come on the platform. And we watch people who are new to the platform. The first thing they do is they go read content. They want to see what's on the platform to see what's there. Where are the new ideas? And we could be the ones, all of us who are on this webinar could be the ones who enjoy putting together that content for them. It's a captive audience in a way, right? So let's see where I am. So choosing your channels, great, using Carib HR Forum. So the next one has to do with the ladder of skills. Another way to generate fresh ideas. So this one is a little more involved. So you'll have to expand this picture so it fills up the screen. But essentially what it's saying is that a new member enters as a trial member over on the left. You can see at the top left-hand corner. They become a full member of Carib HR Forum community. They join the platform. If they're interested in going further, we recommend that they take the How to Be a Great Member training as their first step. If they want to volunteer, we require them to join the engagement team. That's where you kind of learn about Carib HR Forum, what it's about, the ins and takes. You do a 6-week sort of training internship, and then you branch off into one of these 6 specialties. So the specialty I'm talking about tonight is the Maven Teacher specialty, which you can see it's surrounded by yellow, and it has to do with generating content and teaching other people. I'm going to go into it in more detail a little bit later on, but it has a very particular pathway or a ladder of skills that we've identified. The great thing about a ladder is that it makes it easy for you to think about your development. I'm going to explain this particular ladder a little bit later, as I said. Okay, here is another. Lots of ideas tonight, huh? Ooh. So this is the idea to team up with a partner. And another example of what we did in here at Caribbean HR Forum, back in 2008, we teamed up with Dr. Gail Archibald and put out a study, which at the time was a study of all the regional HR conferences and what the experience was like. And there was a lot of strong sentiment at the time, still is, of course, for a regional conference and to bring everyone together. So those are some of the ways you can provoke your content to take it to the next level and keep it fresh. That would allow you to work on the supply side. But ultimately, you do need an easy plan. So I've given you a bunch of different practices, best practices, case studies that we've used, ideas. I've given you some of the theory behind it, some of this academic theory, in some cases, some of its studies. But to bring it all together, you need a plan. And let's talk about the kind of plan that you need. So without it, you could flounder by jumping around from one thing to the next. You do need to sort of pace yourself and figure out, okay, how do I get to the promised land of consistently creating great HR content for a Caribbean audience? So let's talk about a skill development plan. So that's one plan that I'm going to go into in some more detail here tonight. So your skill development plan, and by the way, I haven't stopped asking you for your input, so I'm going to ask you in just a minute, so pay good attention. So here's a ladder that I took it from the one that I showed you with respect to Caribbean HR Forum and how we encourage people to follow one of the pathways. I said it was the Maven teacher pathway. So I made some changes to it for our purposes tonight. And I said, okay, here's a ladder that you could think of in terms of content creation for an HR audience here in the Caribbean. So I'm going to ask you to answer the 3 questions in just a minute, but let me just spend a moment to explain each of the steps on the ladder. So the first step is the beginner step. I won't explain that one because it means that you're at the beginning, right? So a curator is someone who expertly brings together the content of others. Now, there was mention before about this in the discussion that we were having earlier. And there's an ineffective way to do that, which is copy and paste. Or just see who has 1 million followers and take their stuff and just copy and paste that. Or see which piece of content worked in the UK and copy and paste that. Or see whatever has a nice picture or a nice video and copy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about selectively going after content that already exists that meets the unmet needs of your audience. So to do that well, you need to have done the unmet needs exercise, or you need to be at that level of deep understanding so that you understand who the thought leaders are in that space. You understand what your audience is frustrated because it can't find. And you're 3 steps ahead, finding what they need and then supplying it to them through different channels. Okay? So it argues here for a kind of specialization where you're not yet producing your own content. You're not quite ready yet. You may not have what it takes to some degree. You may not have the courage or just the time. I would argue and say anybody can start developing content any day just by understanding the unmet needs. That's actually the hard part. The easy part is doing the searching to find the content. Once you know what you're looking for, you begin to find people who tell you where to find it. But you've got to be very sharp about finding it. Okay, so the second level is content creation. So this is where you've done your unmet needs. You can see and you understand what your audience wants. You understand the motives. You understand the substitutes. You understand the unmet needs. And you're cranking out content. And the next one is webinar creator. So tonight I'm in the role of a webinar creator. And as you know, I only do 1 or 2 of these a year or so for our audience. Most of the time we're inviting other people to come create webinars. And they move into, it's a more demanding task than creating static content. because you're in front of a live audience like I am right now. And it can be nerve wracking. And if you make a mistake, it lasts forever. So the next level is that you train other people to lead webinars. And that's where we're getting into like the training that we want to offer. We're going to offer. Diana, yes. Yeah, that's a great idea for next year's conference. September 2021. Yep. Love that one. Someone they'll keep a good track of Diana's answer question, idea there. And then finally, at the top of the rung, as far as we know today, there's you manage content, communities of HR professionals. So you manage conferences, you manage groupings of content creators and people who could benefit from basically their audiences. So Rajiv wants to run the youth arm of Caribbean HR Forum. Good idea. All right, so let's get some answers. I'd like for you to answer the 3 questions, and I'm suggesting a construct once again that you could actually use. What level are you currently at? Which one do you aspire to by when? And what is your plan to climb? Let's see some answers, just some preliminaries. I'm not going to hold you to this. This is just the draft. We're playing around. There's no right or wrong answers. But in your experience, how do you answer those questions? What level are you currently at? Which one do you aspire to and by when? And what is your plan to climb the ladder? No need to put an epistle. Just give us an idea so that we can share ideas and see sort of which way our energy is going here. Actually, this is a good point at which to take our technical break. So I'm not going to say anything more. Let's get some answers in the chat. And if you need 5 minutes, you can take 5 minutes, because we're going to be coming back here at 7:15 to continue. And I'll just take answers when we come back. Oh, there's our warning. Can you see that warning? It says the event will close in 2 minutes. Please wrap up your conversations and exchange contacts. So just keep refreshing your screen. I'm going to close us down. I'll go and do a technical reset, and we'll start back at 1:15. And I want to see some answers to this question, okay? Guys, the best way for content creators to work is not alone. And I know many content creators tend to be introverts, but one of the big lessons from tonight and from the training is that when we work together with each other, we are 10 times more effective. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. And I want you to come back ready to share. Let's go out of presentation mode. I'm going to close down the room, and we're going to start back at 1:15, which is in exactly 3 minutes time. See you in a few. Bye. See you in a few.